Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's show. Happy Thursday. It is August 19th, and Thursdays always are weekend eve. So I'm really excited. I'm also really excited about this show, CJ, because still feeling bullish. I mean, not so bad. Um, but before we get into it all, I just want to say, guys, whatever we say, whatever we vocalize, talk about, analyze, show you on the screen or anything else, just meant for your entertainment and education. So please, we're not financial advisors at all. But CJ, how you doing today?
I'm doing really good. Today's a special episode as well because I've known you for over a year now, almost a year and a half, and I think this is the first time I've seen you for an extended time without a hat. Beautiful head of hair, my friend. But I'm excited. We got a lot of analysis to do today.
I think it's going to be the first time anybody's seen me with hair. So interesting enough. Real quick, CJ, before we jump into the big boards, you ever, we got beefy.finance here, hitting 5,100% on the relative tweet volume, and it's had good price action. Do you know Beefy Finance at all? Have you ever delved into it?
No, I've never heard of that one. But let's see what it's ranked on CoinMarketCap. It's BIFI is the ticker.
Yeah, BFI is BIFI is the ticker.
Ranked 409. Price at about $1,100 right now. I've not heard of it, but it's definitely starting to trend positive. And any insight into that tweet volume and what that is coming from?
I haven't dissected it yet. It's done 60 positive. It's done plus 60% returns in the last 30 days. I'm gonna check it out though, but it's hot for the 3% and the projected at 1 hour. Interesting. I mean, that's just an outside jump in social media action. So, what about Bitcoin though? What's happening there?
I'd love to talk about Bitcoin. First, let's just cover the S&P because we got some interesting stuff going on. And I've said it, but I'll say it again. Bitcoin has remained remarkably resilient in the midst of this uncertainty and this little sell-off that we've experienced this week. I mean, if you think about the sentiment in the traditional markets, I remember, Alex, I remember when we retraced here and all these times, every time we go back to the 20 smooth moving average, everybody gets really, really scared and we act or we feel like the market's going to crash and the gloom and doomers take over and whatnot. However, we always go back and rally to new all-time highs just because of the sheer amount of liquidity in the system and the Fed really not tapering. And so I really don't see anything changing from a macro perspective. And what I've loved to do based on this uptrend is when we look at the 20 smooth, each time we get a bullish engulfing candle or a bounce from this level, I consider that bullish confirmation and I like to enter. So for instance, on these last three right here, on that candle would have been a pretty optimal entry. Here as well. And here as well, just coming back in July of 20th. So depending on where we close today, if we get a very nice bullish engulfing candle, I'm going to look to re-enter or I'm looking to get more bullish on the S&P 500. And really the only equity index that's showing some weakness is really the IWM. But I think there's an argument to be made that since there are many, many companies in the Russell 2000, a lot of them are already down, 10, 15% from their highs. And we've likely experienced a pretty sufficient correction. But as long as we hold this level here, we typically go back and create new highs as well. So what does this mean for Bitcoin? Well, the point I made earlier was that it's nice to see Bitcoin rallying today and yesterday off a doji candle in spite of this negative sentiment in the equity market. I mean, it really can't get more bearish than when, we have a tragedy being shown on the news in Afghanistan. It's truly horrible. And no investor really wants to allocate money into the market when we have really tragic events like that occurring with global uncertainty. But time is passing and time heals all wounds, especially in the short minds of investors. And so we're starting to get some bullish price action here, which I think is incredibly promising for the Bitcoin price. And I'll show you another pattern that I think is pretty interesting that might be playing out in Bitcoin. And this has to do with Elliott wave theory. And so I don't talk about Elliott wave theory a whole lot. I know there's a lot of skepticism and criticism of it because it can be highly subjective when trying to select these various Elliott waves and apply them to the actual trend that's occurring. However, this one is so basic that I think a lot of traders are looking at it, and it's going to resonate with the whole self-fulfilling prophecy idea.
Well, let's step back real quick, CJ. Explain to the folks just briefly what the Elliott wave is.
Yeah, so the Elliott wave, Elliott was a titan of technical analysts, just like Gann and Dow and Livermore back in the 20s and 30s. And he basically philosophized that the market it's kind of like snowflakes in the sense that they are very similar in certain trends and waves specifically, yet no snowflake is identical. And so when we form these basic patterns among the Elliott wave structures, sure, the trends do have a tendency to follow them to a certain degree if the patterns are identified correctly. The problem is a lot of people identify patterns incorrectly when they're trying to apply Elliott wave theory, and I think that's the largest criticism of it. But here, we have specific rules in order to justify this basic pattern. Most notably, and what I think we're at right now, is the start of wave 5. And that's because wave 4 cannot go below the peak of wave 1. And that level on Bitcoin would be approximately 42K, and we haven't breached that yet. So when we take this whole construct and we actually overlay it to the current Bitcoin chart, it looks something like this. And I think that's pretty interesting because it's very textbook. It's hitting the classic Elliott wave 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 example, and it has perfect confluence with these Fibonacci levels and our resistance target up at 51K. And the fact that we're seeing a bullish engulfing candle or almost a bullish hammer candle here on BTC after a recent downtrend, I'm thinking we're going up. And of course, this weekend could be a little dicey. They always are because they're low volume periods for Bitcoin in the collective cryptocurrency market. Nevertheless, I think this pattern is it is obeying, the model, so to speak, as of now. I'm also going to get into a couple more macro charts, but I just want to pass it back in the meantime to Alex, if you'd like to discuss anything.
No, I'm actually sitting back and learning. I know that today was a pretty cool day as far as hitting the charts was concerned. So I'm just going to watch what you have to say. I know there was, listen, we got a lot of Market Rebellion members that are in the chats and watch our videos. I know there's a lot of takeaways from yesterday's option oracle versus crypto oracles little webinar that you did. So it's interesting to hear your side of the perspective. I didn't think you were going to bust out Elliott wave, to be honest with you. I was surprised.
Yeah, I always like to introduce new things, and I was looking through some textbooks last night, and it was so textbook that I think if it actually does play out, it's going to be a very good learning experience for all the viewers and those in the audience. It's all about being able to form this pattern recognition and see what's in the charts, because I think so many people are incredibly bearish right now with not really a whole great reason to be.
Exactly.
I think there's still... Go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was going to say exactly. I don't know why everybody's so bearish. There is no justification right now. Let me ask you this, CJ, because CJ's the guy that, he's constantly learning the markets. He's constantly has his nose in the books and figuring things out. We've gone through a lot of different patterns, and whether it be Elliott wave, whether it be the pi cycle, what are stock to flow, what is really grabbing you during, I like to call this in between period between bull cycle and a second leg or a bear cycle and a second leg bull cycle? What's grabbing you from a data point standpoint?
I like that because it leads me into the next section of charts I was going to show, because they are not so much technical as they are focused on sentiment and kind of fundamentals speaking to supply and demand dynamics in the market structure. Because you have technical analysis, which can show the reflection of momentum in price, but it doesn't always show supply and demand dynamics. And with Bitcoin, it's awesome because we have the ability to look at exchanges, we have the ability to look on chain and look at a variety of metrics. But what I want to show here today has to do with the exchange net position change in Bitcoin. And this goes for all exchanges that Glassnode includes in their data. And so when we look at previous instances of accumulation throughout history, we had the COVID reaccumulation when we fell. I mean, total capitulation in the equity market, oil, and Bitcoin. Then we have the supply squeeze as a result of the May 2020 halving. Everyone really tried to front run that. And we had MicroStrategy and Square and all of those companies and corporations getting involved in Bitcoin right here that ultimately led to the initial run to 40K. But now what we're seeing is something very similar. And I think that this speaks to macro investors and they're showing their intent almost. You know, this is a way that we can see the hand, so to speak, of the larger players or the investor intent in the market. And when they go into accumulation phases, that means that the investor intent for the next 2 to 6 months, in my opinion, is rather bullish. And that's exactly what we're seeing right now. Let's say we go up and retest the highs and start going into a distribution phase where we start flipping to green. In that case, I'm going to start looking to scale out because based on what we've seen historically, that shows when larger players or just individuals and institutions are taking profit collectively and are entering a collective phase of distribution. But that's not what we're seeing right now. We're still in a phase of accumulation. And that's a clear difference. We didn't experience this in 2018 after the bull market. We didn't even experience it after the top during 2014. So I think this is something that's very unique to our cycle and shows us that, hey, the supply and demand dynamics in the market are still very, very bullish.
Yeah, one of the things that I find really fascinating right now is the fact that we have price action breaking through sentiment. And so it's basically a divergence of a northward bound price to a southward bound negative sentiment. And I like that because that makes me feel bullish overall. And when that happens, CJ, I tend to agree with the charts all that much more because that's what's dictating it when you have this type of divergence. So interesting.
Yeah, I agree. I think for the large caps, sentiment typically is kind of like a moving average in the sense that it kind of lags behind price, but it's still very useful in the sense that it can provide confirmation for a particular trend. So if we see continued bullish price action and a massive flip in sentiment, I think that provides really positive confirmation going into the 50s potentially. Next one I want to jump into though is another Glassnode chart, and this has to do with profit and loss, specifically net unrealized profit and loss. And I think most of you guys have probably seen this chart. It's a very popular one across the space among many fundamental and on-chain analysts. But as you can see, one thing I want to say and just preface this by is that fundamentally, our current market cycle is so different from 2013 and 2014, yet the technicals seem to be lining up a little bit similarly, especially when we talk about entity adjusted net unrealized profit and loss. Because as you can see, on our first leg up of the bull market, we were extended into green territory, which is pretty much belief, right? We can see the color coordinations down here as well. We reached that in 2013, and we actually reached euphoria or greed during that first leg up of the bull cycle. Like many have said, our current cycle looks to be kind of like this two-legged staircase or, the double pump, so to speak. We may be starting that second leg here as we cross back into belief or denial, that green period of time. Really, I see that as a disbelief rally. I think that people are still very bearish due to the fact that we've just gone up so quickly. However, if you look what happened in 2013 and 2014 again, this particular instance found support during that yellow band and has now been able to hold up above the 0.5 level. In any bear market that we've ever experienced, we've never gone back above this 0.1 metric on the net unrealized profit and loss. And so the fact that we're doing that again, that's very promising. We barely did it. I don't even know if you could count this in 2017. We certainly didn't do it during the bear market of 2015 and 2016. But I think that overall, this is very bullish for the market. I think that we may end up seeing something turn out very similar to this kind of double leg up that we saw in 2014. And it all starts with a disbelief rally. I think as long as there's individuals out there calling for, a 70, 80% crash and doom and gloom, and we're going into a 1920s crash, I don't really think it's fair to compare that. And it's a completely different fundamental landscape. And as long as people have that negative sentiment and carry it with them, we can keep going higher.
I also want to point out that chart, which has, it's almost like the different points of grief cycle. If you just change some of the legend around, you can, rate your relationship with it. You can relate your mourning cycle with it. So thanks for that. The interesting thing is that it is clearly starting to form that double top. And I'm going to be curious on when we start getting velocity from that. I'm still expecting the first week or the end of the first week of September to do it. I would be disappointed if we go through the month of September like we're traveling right now. I also think that no matter when the velocity increases, we're still not going past the end of December on the bull run. I want to revisit that with you because I know that every month or so for the last 5 months, we've kind of speculated on what that end of the bull run's going to be like. What are your dates?
I would say we are likely to see a top between December. December might be a little early. I'd say January, February, March, or April. I mean, that's a 4-month period. That's very, very difficult. And I don't know if it's that helpful to call a top in that time frame, but I think that the chances of us seeing a macro correction in Bitcoin after that is very, very high and very likely. And so that's why I think it's really important to develop like an exchange relationship or have some brokerage where you have ample liquidity and you can play the other side of this market, because it's hard on some exchanges because you can only long, right? You can't short on Coinbase and a lot of other exchanges. But if you can get short and not have, total exposure at the top, that's something that is incredibly beneficial. And I think that the cryptocurrency industry has kind of a long bias, right? Because the majority of exchanges only provide long exposure. I mean, you have to go to Kraken and many others to get short. So yeah, I think anywhere in that 3-month time period, we're likely to see a top, and I will be out of the market at that particular point.
It's interesting because if AJM has a comment, bull run will extend to 2022. The only reason I actually will agree with him on that is because we won't let the traditional economy in the U.S. Fail before then. I just think, even if it's synthetically, we're just going to prop it up. And as long as that props up, it's just going to go back to what I always say, which it's going to keep the first leg of a systemic downfall from happening. So with that being said, I just don't know that we actually go any farther than January. But we'll see. I mean, as Chef Dan says, it only goes up. Nothing ever goes down. So I agree. Maybe we just keep it all going up forever and we're all happy. But
I see a comment from Marcus saying, shorting Bitcoin? How dare you?
How dare you? Listen, there's a difference between capital market guys and people who put emotion into it, I guess. I love Bitcoin. You love Bitcoin. But if there's a dollar to be made, we'll short it.
Yeah, I'm not religious about Bitcoin. shamelessly, I'll admit it. Like, I'm here to make a buck at the end of the day, not to lead a social movement.
Let's take a look, folks, at what's going on right now with the hottest altcoins. We got sentiment data on. Let's take a look. Going to the boards, we got the daily sentiment. We'll start there. It's just beefy finance. I mean, we're gonna have to check it out. Some of the comments today, CJ, in the beginning, were people who actually have been using it. We'll have to take a look. We have Titan Swap. Just so you guys know, that's not the same Titan that rug pulled and blew everybody up. One of our fan favorites, CHSB Swissborg, 87%, showing signs of bullish on the daily. Kusama, let's see, Loopring, Omi's Go. What do we got on the hourly? Interesting. Well, I can tell, I can look at that. Voyager, VGX just went to number 2 on the hourly sentiment. That means DJ Crypto, VGX Heroes, everybody is doing a lot on social media to keep that active. So thanks, guys. I don't know. Interesting times right now, CJ. I'm liking it. I'm feeling bullish. I don't want to sound like one of those idiots on other channels, but if we put up a thumbnail that says the market's crashing in when it's acting like this, we're just idiots.
I mean, YouTube is it's an interesting place. You got to get the algorithm going, and that causes desperation in some. But I don't want to get into that. I want to actually address some of these comments here. What's up, DJ Crypto? What's up, Chef Dan? Didn't know you were a chef, but I saw that in the comments yesterday.
He's a real chef. He's a real chef.
I heard. But Meg in the comments says, I think it's important to have a good basic understanding of TA, but fundamentals to make better decisions. Knowledge is power. I completely agree. I choose investment decisions based on fundamental metrics, and then I use technical analysis to decide optimal entry and exit points of those assets. But that's why you can't just look at the Bitcoin chart and say, oh, there's a head and shoulders pattern at, we're going to 15K. That has no understanding of the actual fundamentals and supply and demand dynamics within the overall market. And that's why the technicians got it wrong. So you're right. I do agree. You need a healthy mix of both.
ADA is at 226. That's interesting. All right. I wonder, somebody mentioned Crazy Kaiser. I'm assuming Max Kaiser. Please don't put that into the chats. CJ Crypto. All right, buddy. A lot going on, a lot to unpack. Guys, Monty had off today, so you're missing Monty in the sneaker garages. I apologize. We'll be back tomorrow for the week, for the end of the week wrap up, going to the weekend. Going to pick out a project also for us to go over as well. I know that we have our Trade the Chain AMA at 12 noon tomorrow, and we actually have a report coming out. If I'm not mistaken, it's one that we've recently done as well. It's been good. But folks, hang on to your handlebars. Thanks for tuning in today. We'll see you tomorrow.
One last thing.
What?
Can I say one last thing?
Yes, all right, CJ, back to the mic.
My bad. I'm sorry for butchering that. But, I mean, we ended a little early. Just wanted to go over some comments. But it says, CJ, kindness matters, says, CJ, when you say you're out, what do? USDC, earn interest, and look to buy puts on Bitcoin or Bitcoin-related equities. We're not going anywhere. We'll be here. We're just getting started.
Well, now that you're going to open up that can of worms, I think it's important for the folks to know that when the market's going down, people are still making money. Why isn't it you? Because you need to learn how to do that. So there's different type of investors. There's the hodler, there's the trader, whether it's short term, long term, many trades, no trades. you just need to learn the different secrets to making money, whether it has to do with shorts, whether if you're sophisticated enough for options, depending on what your permanent risk, your personal risk level is and tolerance. So, I mean, you won't see CJ or anybody else on this show out of anything, even during a bear market. I mean, you're looking at two guys right now who went through 3 years of a bear market in crypto. We didn't change jobs. We didn't go into something else. So you need to figure out how to make money, chase that yield up and down markets. To what CJ said, a lot of people yield farmed during the last bear cycle. That's chasing yield. Do it. So that way when the bull cycle comes, you're good to go.
Yeah, I mean, to just very, very simplify it, I mean, there's 3 market conditions. You are either in a bull market, a bear market, or a range-bound market. And so you need to know how to profit in each one of those. And in crypto, we have a long bias because a lot of the exchanges don't allow for shorting. But when we're in a range-bound market, I recommend looking at various option strategies and selling premium. And then, of course, riding the trend down in a bear market, and what we're doing right now, trying to ride the trend up in a bull market and buy dips. So without getting too much into it,
we got to do another show on this. We got to show people different strategies. We'll do that in another episode. Folks, thanks for putting up with us. Really appreciate it. This time I'm really saying goodbye. Okay, so hang on to your handlebars. We'll see you tomorrow. Don't forget, we got the news episode coming out later today with Ryan Gorman, and we'll see you there as well. Thanks, guys.